Hello, Leapers, and welcome back to the Quantum Leap Podcast. I'm Albie. I'm here with Matt, as always. And today we have Joe Dinicol. It was Eugene in the control room with the pen.
Isn't it always?
Yes. We should have seen it from the start.
You look too young to have the IMDb you have. How long have you been working in this business?
Oh, dear. I have been working professionally for it's 30 years this year. To be fair, I started very young. I started in the theater when I was 9 years old. So and I've had I had a long career as a busboy and barback. I've taken, I've gone all over the place. It's not chock full of, I'm not that successful, but yes, I've been at this a very, very long time. My father was an actor, and my grandfather on my mother's side was an actor. They were both classical theater actors, and I come by this, as I like to say, very dishonestly. So yes, it's been a long road.
Do you remember some of your earlier roles?
I mean, my earlier roles. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I started at the Stratford Festival of Canada. I was there as a kid for 5 seasons, and I was in Antony and Cleopatra and Cyrano de Bergerac and Waiting for Godot and a number of shows. But my first role on film and TV was in a movie called Elvis Meets Nixon. And I played a character called 10-Year-Old Boy, which is a pivotal role, clearly. That Elvis, the basic idea is that Elvis went to meet Nixon to try and help with the war on drugs, while wildly addicted to drugs. And he went and he was sort of deputized as an officer of against drugs, maybe of the DEA. I don't really, I'm forgetting some of the details. And he meets this kid on the plane. That was my first role in a movie or a TV show.
This sounds like a film I need to see. Thank you.
Do you have any recollection of that in your brain? I know it's hard to remember.
Yeah, no, I remember it very clearly. Those sort of initial days on a set. I remember it was back when it was all filmed, and so everything took a great deal longer. So it wasn't uncommon. I had 4 or 5 lines. It was one scene, and I must have been there for 12 hours. I mean, you just kind of waited. Back then, you would wait around for what felt like days. But I remember my dad took me, and we could go to the craft service track. I mean, everything is so novel at that point. Now it sort of feels old hat that there's gummy bears and Ritz crackers everywhere you look. But back then it was a really novel experience. And also it was something, I grew up in the theater, and moving into film and TV was what sort of differentiated me from my dad and from my grandfather. And that was a decision I was very conscious of making. And so my first day on set was a really big deal, because I was starting to get really interested in movies, and I think at the time just doing something different than my family. It felt sort of very inherited to be an actor for me at that age, and I wanted something that I could sort of forge my own path. And so those early days on set were really, really important, because I was kind of figuring out what I liked about acting and what I sort of brought to the table. So yeah, it was certainly a formative day as a 10-year-old boy.
Did you ever question that desire to go into acting? Like, after you'd had a few years doing TV and film, did you experiment with any more standard kinds of career, or was that
not
it?
really?
That it
I mean, I think I questioned it much later. I will say that some of my first jobs, I booked a couple of commercials back to back when I was about 13, and I almost quit because I hated doing commercials so much. I haven't done a commercial since then, since I was about 13, and just because it had, the problem is that being on a movie or even a TV show for an actor, if you're not acting, like if you're just standing there holding a candy bar, it has very little to do with you. It's not really an actor's medium. Theater is an actor's medium. So doing a commercial, if you like the acting part of the day, which can be very minimal a lot of the time, a commercial, there's almost none of it. And so it can be very mind-numbing to stand there and do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again with a bunch of disinterested people sitting on a couch, telling you to say it this way, that way, and the other. So that was certainly a time I thought about maybe getting out of the business. But I mean, the reality is that like I said, I come from a family of performers. It's sort of, it's not hyperbole to say that it's in the genes in a lot of ways. It just nothing else ever seemed as exciting or important. Not important in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, there are much more important things, but to be present and to be alive and to be with other people creating something that there's just nothing like it. So I never, like I said, I worked in restaurants for years and years as a feature of being an out of work actor, but I never thought about, every time I thought about having another job, I realized, like, I thought for a while, maybe I want to be a lawyer. And then what I realized was I want to give the closing arguments in the movie as a lawyer. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't want to do a bunch of paperwork and school and nonsense. I want to say, I want to give a speech written by Aaron Sorkin or Patty Chayefsky, or, like, I'm not really that interested in the nuts and bolts of what being a lawyer actually is. I want to give a performance. I want to perform and get someone off, but that's acting. That's not being a lawyer. So the short answer is no, not really.
I noticed you did a lot of genre work in Arrow. And how did you get into being like a superhero, Ragman, and all that?
Well, that's an interesting one. I when those shows started happening, when Arrow started, the casting directors of those shows, predominantly David Rappaport, became a fan of mine years and years ago. I had auditioned for Gossip Girl, and he always really liked me. And I had auditioned for something else in the Arrowverse. I won't be too specific about what it was, and I wasn't quite right for it in the end, but there were some people pulling for me, and Greg Berlanti became a fan. And as big and powerful as Greg Berlanti is, he's one of the real human beings in show business, and he remembered me. And so when that didn't happen, about a year later, I got a call. An offer to come and be on Arrow, which is not something, I don't get offers ever, really. That's not where I am in my career. And he liked me and wanted to pay it forward and gave me that part. It was originally supposed to be a couple of episodes, and they ended up liking me and keeping me around for a little while. And so yeah, that was just one of those, if you're around long enough and you were, you do the work, and you're going to find, people say it's who you know. It's who your fans are. Eventually you start to meet people, and as we're talking about Quantum Leap, show run by Martin Garrow, who's a great friend of mine. And we became friends because we loved working together. It wasn't that we were buddies and he put me in a show. We worked very closely on a TV show. And we really loved working together. And then we ended up becoming great friends. But, you work long enough in this business and days on set are long. And if you like being around people, that can go a long way. Great art doesn't get made by people hating each other. I don't think. I'm sure it's possible, but especially TV, it's a grind to make TV, especially an hour-long drama. The days are long, the years are long. Network TV, they work 9, 10. I was on Grey's Anatomy for a little while. They worked almost 11 months of the year. Like, it's a grueling schedule. And if you don't like the people you're around, it can be even more grueling. So you're just always trying to make fans. And that's sort of how I ended up on Arrow.
Was it Blind Spot with Martin that pretty much got you Quantum Leap? Did you get the offer for Quantum Leap, or did that work?
No, I auditioned. I got Blind Spot because Martin and I had done a show together called the LA Complex, which was a short-lived show on the CW that is very near and dear to all of us who were on. It was sort of about a group of disparate, out of work show business hopefuls. I played a stand-up comedian, and there was, there was a dancer and a bunch of actors and someone trying to be a music producer. And it was very critically adored, and nobody watched it. So, but we all loved making it. And it was sort of, it's how I met Martin. It's how we became friends. And when Blind Spot came around, he was, that show could be very heavy, and it was, it was a procedural, and it had a lot of FBI and intrigue. And I think he had wanted to infuse more humor into it and more heart. And so he had written this part. He called me and said, I wrote a part for you. We're going to make everyone fall in love with you, and then we're going to kill you and break everyone's heart. And so I was like, well, that sounds fun. He's like, and we shoot it in New York. So that's how that happened. And then Quantum Leap, I got an audition and I auditioned and ended up getting it, so it's how these things work, and the machinations of the higher ups of show business is certainly beyond my pay grade. So sometimes you get an offer and that's great, and sometimes you have to go through the regular channels, and it's all the same to me at the end of the day. But certainly I'm sure Martin was looking out for my audition. I would hope, but yeah.
So how long was it from auditioning to actually being on set?
Oh gosh, probably maybe a week. Yeah, the guest star role in television is a fast moving train. They're making these things. You forget they have to not only write them, they have to get them approved, and they have to, everything is in a condensed timeline. So sets are being built, and so hiring people, especially a show like Quantum Leap, I would imagine, which is almost an entirely new cast every episode. Other than obviously the core in the Quantum Leap lab and Ben and Addison, but every episode, it's not like they're always at the office and there's one new person. He's meeting a whole world of people in every episode, as you know. So yeah, it all moves pretty quickly. Yeah, it was probably, I want to say it was about a week, maybe a little longer, but not much.
Can you take me through the process of filming an episode like this, the one with time loops? Like, are the camera setups the same, and you just go through each different time loop and do it differently, or are you doing it more in order? Or it doesn't make it more difficult than a normal guest starring role on a TV show when you have to do the same things over and over again, but different?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, the first thing we did quite smartly, I think, was to do the opening of what would then be the thing we loop around over and over again, just so that we could set what happens. So we go, that's the longest version of it that we see. So this is what we do beginning to end, and everyone, that's sort of what makes it difficult, is it's not like what's great about filming a film or a TV show is you finish a scene, that's it. You don't have to think about it again, Whereas this, you're kind of going, okay, well, on this line, I picked up the pencil, and on that line, I pressed this button. And you're kind of, much like you would rehearse a play, you're sort of blocking it out to be recreated later. And then, sort of as you go on, it gets a little easier because, for instance, pretty much all the stuff in the elevator in one day, we just sort of went, everything that happens in the elevator, we do from this camera angle. And then they move it over to the side and they go, everything that happens over here, and they go up top. It's called block shooting, right? So everything we try and use the set efficiently so that we're not relighting. I say we like I'm lighting anything. I'm not lighting anything. That's against the rules. But yeah, so it sort of starts out a little more laborious for something like this because you're really trying to track and set up, because you don't want to get to day 5 and go, oh, we forgot that he was supposed to do this thing because that's what matters in this version of the loop. So you're trying to track, but the writing on this episode was really, really airtight. It was a really beautifully written script and a really fun, and everything had been thought of. And the writer was there every day. She was there every day and had obviously, given this a great deal of thought so that everything could be sort of perfectly marked as we went through. So realistically, the most difficult part of it, I think, was mostly for Ray, who had to constantly be changing costumes. I know usually he leaps into someone and that's the episode. And this one, he leapt into 5 people. So when we're doing the elevator, we do one thing, he's me, then he has to change into the Colonel, then he has to change, he's constantly changing into into different costumes. But yeah, it sort of gets easier as you go, as you realize like, okay, we've set everything right. And now we just have to, you're kind of checking things off a list. You're going, okay, well now we have to do the scene this way where he's this person and the fireball comes in at this time, or, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, it's a bit of a fun puzzle to figure out and go, we want to set this up right. Because the last thing you want is for it not to pay off. You want the idea that, you know, you do an episode where it's basically all in one set. It's got to feel like it's got momentum and it's got, you know, movement and stakes. And I think the writing, especially on this episode, and the direction, Pamela was such an incredible director, and yeah, they just did a great job. So yeah, it sort of started out a little more laborious, and then it sort of picks up steam.
Did you get much extra prep time yourself to get your head around all that? Because I sort of imagine the writer and director probably had like storyboards up with kind of the red string pointing to everything. But as actors, were you all just being led through it? Or did you spend some time beforehand kind of, head down, the hell is this all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the other thing you have to remember is that in something like this, we're not aware that it's happening again, right? Like none of us are aware that this is a Groundhog Day type situation. So you're trying to look at it from as if that opening chunk is the whole day. That's all it is, right? There's not a new arc for you when they loop back. It's just restarting the same thing. So really you're looking at that and going like, within this, from my point of view, you know, what's happening? What do I need to clock? And especially for me, like, what do I need to sort of sprinkle in there? You know, not too much, but you know, but yeah. And again, like I said, it was so well written that it was very clear there was no point where you're like, well, wait a second, this is supposed to happen, but we didn't do that there was none of that, because it was a really airtight script. But to answer your actual question, no, we don't get a lot of time. You know, again, guest starring on a show, you're kind of dropped in, and that's a skill you sort of have to develop as an actor in television. Is like, you know, you have to be able to learn lines very quickly and adapt, meet a whole, you know, crew and cast of people, drop in and luckily on something like Quantum Leap, you know, this is, I mean, first of all, you know, a show run by Martin Garrow is these things are top down, or is always just a treat. You know, he sets a tone in his shows that you know, no assholes allowed, and everyone's working towards the greater good, and there's no egomaniacs, and that comes from him, but it also comes from Ray and Caitlin, who also set an incredible tone and are welcoming and kind and fun and excited to be there, and excited to have whoever's there that week. Like, we're their castmates, you know. It's not like there's one person joining a crew of people that are always there. It's like they have a whole new cast to play with, and they were extremely welcoming. So, because, you know, you don't get a lot of time in TV, but fortunately on this one, that wasn't much of an issue.
With such a small cast, and with all of your scenes basically being with each other the whole time, and the block shooting, did you guys form a bond like more than you would as a normal guest star coming in to do a few scenes? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, yeah, we did. The guy who played the Colonel, him and I hit it off, got on like a house on fire. I found out that he did a movie with my grandfather called Baby's Day Out. And he was a theater guy, and we started talking theater. And, you know, again, you're sitting around all day, and, you know, in the best of cases, you're a bunch of actors who just got a job. You should be pretty happy. You know, it's a nice place to be. I live in North Hollywood, and we shot this on the Universal lot. I've never shot on the Universal lot. It's 15 minutes from my house. You know, you're driving as the sun's coming up. You drive onto, you know, arguably the most iconic studio lot in California, and, you know, someone brings you breakfast if you want. You know, it's a good day. You know, it should be a good day. And so And I think everyone took that, and we all had a real blast. Robert Picardo was having a great time, and he's a real, he's a real pro, and we got along famously. And again, the cast was so welcoming and really set a tone of, we're here to do great work and to have fun. It should be fun. It's not coal mining. It's we're making fun art that should be a good time. And it really was.
Is it true that you've met Scott Bakula at some point?
Yeah, I have. I guess kind of briefly. So when I was about, like I said, I've done this a long time, and I'm Canadian. I've been in LA for about 10 years now, but I came up working in Toronto, and back. This is a long time ago. Let's just say that I was a teenager, and back then they used to do hundreds and hundreds of pilots. Most of them never went to series. Now it's a lot more selective. They spend their money, I think, a lot more wisely. But they used to make tons of these things. And in Toronto, every once in a while, they would have a call, for some show, and you never heard anything. And so I had auditioned for some sitcom or single cam, some comedy, right? It was called Father Can't Cope. About a dad whose kids are this and his wife, and they're trying to go on a trip or something. I don't really remember. Starring Scott Bakula. And I get a call saying, you're the guy. They watched your tape, you're the guy. And they want to fly you down to LA to meet you. You're the guy, right? And so I fly down with my mom. I was 16. They put us up in a hotel, and we get driven over to Fox, and I walk in the room, and I look around, and there's 6 other the guys. And so I realized, okay. This is a screen test. This is my first screen test. And I go into the room to audition, and there's Scott Bakula, and he reads with us. He's very, very sweet. And we all do it a number of times, and they come out and they call 3 of our names. Mine was one. We go over to the network, and I walk into a room, and Scott is sitting there in front of me, very kind, very encouraging. And I look up, and there's no joke, 50 people in sort of an auditorium style room. And in all honesty, I buckled. Like I had no idea this was what it was going to be like. And I started shaking like a leaf. Like no one prepared me for what, I've since done a number of network tests, and they're nerve wracking, but you know what to expect. People are there to kind of judge you or, what have you. But I had no idea what to expect. He was very, very kind. The show shot the pilot, and you've never heard of the show Father Can't Cope, so it never went anywhere. But that is my somewhat loose connection to Scott Bakula.
That's a very cool connection.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's all right. He was my first acting trip to LA was with Scott Bakula.
That's pretty good.
That's all right.
One weird technical question I had when I was watching the episode, I saw they had a photo of you and Robert Picardo kind of de-aged. Was that like one of your old photos, or did you guys go in and do a little photo session and then they photoshopped it, or how did that work?
Yeah, we they did a little photo shoot in the offices, and I actually didn't do it with him. We're not in the same room. And then everything they do digitally. I mean, now they do everything. The amount they can do digitally is so incredible. So they were just like, just stand like this, we'll do the rest, So yeah, no, that was not an old picture of me. I don't know if they referenced old pictures or they just made me look like that. But yeah, that's all movie magic.
So they did Photoshop you and Bob together, but not for the reason we might have thought.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we ended up being together for many days, but by that point we're already shooting, and they needed the photo, and I think he was coming in a day later or something, so it's one of those scheduling things.
For most of the episode, all the guest cast is pretty much equal parts because they're all suspects and they're all in every scene. Yeah. But towards the end of the episode, when we actually find out what happened and who's doing what, it more becomes your episode as like the main guest star because of just that last scene between you and Raymond.
Yes.
There was a lot going on in there, like emotion, and you had to communicate why and you were doing it and your mental state. And I think you did a really great job in the episode. What was that? Did that add to the level of difficulty, or from your experience, is it just like another day at work?
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons it's fun to do. I mean, getting to do a meaty scene is, it can be difficult. Certainly, you're trying to perform well. Robert Klein, the famous comedian, said, "Everyone can be funny. Can you be funny at 8:00 on a Saturday?" Right? Like, you have to be able to turn these things on. That's just part of the job. So it's certainly challenging to muster up wanting to kill a room full of people, and what is your reason, and sort of building up why you would do something like that. That's sort of the work that goes into it beforehand. The only time that becomes really challenging is if you're trying to do a scene like that with someone who's not present with you or giving you something back, and luckily that's not the case. Ray is such an amazing scene partner that that it ends up being kind of not easy, but it's that's what we love to do. Acting's not about winning. It's about allowing yourself to lose on screen and be affected. And so when you're given permission, or you give yourself permission to do that, that's what acting is at its best, I think. So yeah, it's certainly challenging, and it's a long day, and there's a lot of angles, and that stuff can get tiring emotionally, but that's what you train for. That's what you you got to get enough sleep and not eat too much sugar, and that's the job. Is you have to be emotionally fit, basically. So yeah, it's challenging, but it's really, really, I mean, that's the good stuff. That's what makes it worthwhile.
Did you know you had that good stuff coming up when you auditioned, or were you just given the part as, hey, nerdy scientist guy, that's it, run with it? And
no, I think one of the audition scenes was the turn at the end, or at least part of it. So I did know that it was me, which is a fun thing to play throughout the episode, because I think that's why you cast someone like me. I kind of look like nothing bad has ever happened to me, you put the glasses on and you go like, this guy he can do anything bad. So that's kind of the fun part, is trying to bury that, but also have little red herrings here and there, and foreshadowing that doesn't tip the scale, but also is something that maybe if you go back and watch, you go, oh, okay, I see that moment there. I see what he was doing. So yeah, it's a fun little puzzle to kind of put together.
Yeah, I was watching this episode with my daughter Serenity, and she was very adamant that it wasn't your character. So she wanted me to tell you did a great job, and
yay!
Her. Does it add another level to playing the character when you know you're the one who did it, and you have to act like you didn't do it, but act like at the same time you know you did it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's kind of that's the fun challenge. Like, I often think of you've seen the movie The Departed. The Leonardo DiCaprio role in that movie is very interesting because he has to do a lot of things. He has to be nervous that he's undercover in the mob. We have to, as the audience, have to know he's nervous, but we also have to believe that they don't know he's nervous, right? Because he's pulling it off. So it's a very interesting balancing act of trying to, in the best case scenario, Serenity doesn't think it's me, but if she goes back and watches it again, she can go, oh, right, of course it's him. That's, I don't know if we did that. We'll see. But like, that sort of best case scenarios, you're trying to drop things that maybe on second viewing or when the turn is revealed, your brain goes, oh, right, of course. Right. That's the sort of the fine line you're trying to walk. But that's a tricky thing to do. But I think the way that the episode was constructed was so well done that you kind of never get quite enough time with people to really see what's going on with them. I mean, I was certainly playing or experiencing moments of stress that I might be found out, but you're also covering them up and then it's up to the editors and the director to put it together in a way that is, it's like a great murder mystery. Yeah. that's kind of the fun of it. But we're certainly trying for that. So thank you, Serenity. That makes me very happy that she never suspected me.
Not a bit. She really loved the episode. My final silly question is, did you get to keep the pen?
I didn't keep the pen, but I did keep my ID badge, which I kept. Well, I kept partly because the prop master just gave it to me. He was like, everyone wants something like this. And the reason I wanted it is because my character name, Eugene Wagner. Wagner is the last name of every character I've played in Martin's shows. So in the LA Complex, I was Nick Wagner, and in Blind Spot, I was David Wagner. And so that was a nice little thing for us, named after a friend of ours, and something that one of the things Martin likes to put in his shows, these kind of fun little Easter eggs. And so that was a real thrill for us. I also always wear glasses in his shows. So, but I didn't keep the pen, unfortunately, but I did keep the ID badge. I've got that just over yonder.
Very cool.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Very cool. Do you have any upcoming projects you can tell us about?
Yeah, I am. One I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about yet. The other is I produced and starred in a movie that I made with a close friend of mine, Sebastian Piggott. It's a movie called Bring It All Back Home. We just finished editing it, and we're sort of submitting to festivals. It's our first foray into making things on our own. And so we're so proud of it. It's some of the best work I've ever done, certainly. And it's a really, really personal film. So we're hoping to get that into as many festivals and in front of as many people as possible. It's, independent film. It's difficult. And then I have, like I said, I have something I'm not sure if I'm allowed to announce that I'm a part of coming up. I believe it'll come out maybe in the spring or the summer. I'm not sure. They don't tell me anything.
Okay,
IMDb has.
We'll be on the lookout for
IMDb
that.
has something called Hindsight listed for you.
Oh yes, so, that was a really cool thing I did. It's a podcast, like a scripted podcast. That's very, very cool. It's we did it all on a stage, so everything was mic'd, and we got to do it sort of like a play, as opposed to sitting in front of a lectern and talking. We did it all like and it's sort of it involves it involves magic and mystery, and I don't want to say too much about it, but it's a really, really cool project that I'm excited to hear it myself. I know that they're working on it. And it's very cool. It's going to be a very cool project. So yeah, look out for that. Look out for Hindsight and Bring It All Back Home, which I'm so stoked about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I saw the poster for Bring It All Back Home, and it has an interesting tagline, so I'm intrigued.
Yes. Yeah. It's a line from the movie that will make more sense when you see the movie.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll definitely check that out.
Oh, awesome.
And finally, can you tell me like what your takeaway is from working on Quantum Leap, and just the whole process of filming it and just being a part of now another genre universe, Quantum Leap?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, I used to feel this way about Arrow. It's very cool to be a part of a cultural touchstone, and in the case of Quantum Leap, this is a show that deals in identity and understanding other people's identity. And that's something that's really prescient right now and something that's really important. And so to have a show that's handling that intelligently and gracefully, but also in a fun way, in an entertaining way, it's just a real honor to just be a part of it. I'm such a fan of film and TV and that stuff. So to get to be a part of it that's one of the reasons I do this. We don't do it to be in a vacuum. I like that people see it, that you guys saw it, that people watch it, they have opinions, good or bad, it doesn't really matter. And so to be a part of a show that I think is doing something not only entertaining, but important to for once a week to think about what would it be like to be in someone else's shoes. That's something pretty important, I think, right now. So I'm really honored.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you guys. Yeah.